Upon hearing what Yiking had just said, Lu Sheng's expression changed drastically. He began to look at him with a surprised look and asked if it was true that the defensive line of the 835th Division had been destroyed. Closing his eyes, he activated his perception ability, causing his body to emit a purple energy. Upon seeing the energy emanating from Lu Sheng's body, Yiking's expression drastically changed. He began to look at him with a surprised gaze and couldn't help but wonder if this was his mental strength, so powerful that it could even penetrate his soul. Several seconds later, Lu Sheng slowly started to open his eyes, deactivating the perception ability. Gradually, the purple energy surrounding his body began to disappear. He began to look at Yiking with a serious gaze and asked him if the army knew whether the defensive line had collapsed, and also asked him what had happened to the reinforcements. Yiking approached him and calmly explained that their superiors had told them that they had already sent reinforcements, but for now they had received orders to retreat. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng asked him why he didn't retreat. Yiking became somewhat nervous, started looking at the ground and revealed to him that their master had not retreated, but had died fighting. So they were not going to leave either, thinking it would be good to kill one more mutant beast before dying. They didn't care where they died, they just wanted to accompany and honor their master. With a serious voice, Lu Sheng asked him what the consequences would be if the defense line was broken. Yiking began to imagine the defensive line, which had walls covered in soldiers' blood. As sweat dripped from his face, he started looking towards the ground and explained that if the defensive line broke, then both sides of the defense lines would be affected. If they couldn't return in time to defend, mutant beasts would emerge and cause a massacre. In the city where they were now, it was in ruins. All the buildings had collapsed and there wasn't a single soul. In summary, if the defense line broke, then, just like what had happened in this city, many innocent people would die. Lu Sheng simply stayed silent without interrupting. He began to look at the ruins of the city and started to imagine what could happen if the defense line collapsed. He put both hands in his pants pockets, turned his back to Yiking, started moving away from him, and told him that he had understood the situation. Yiking was shocked and couldn't help but wonder what Lu Sheng was planning to do. He panicked, turned his body backwards, started looking at him with a worried look, began waving his hands to indicate that he should stop, and explained to him that this was the war zone, where there was an endless wave of mutant beasts. Lu Sheng didn't listen to him, simply kept walking. And while his body was emitting a blue energy, with a determined look he asked Yiking not to worry about him and decided to go take a look. His body transformed into a powerful blue energy. He began to gain momentum and thought that something could still be done about it. Yiking turned his body backwards, and upon seeing this, his expression changed drastically. He was left speechless and couldn't help but wonder how only one person was going to handle the situation. Lu Sheng began to move at an incredible speed and jump from building to building. He took a big leap, and while he was in the air, he tightly clenched his fists, closed his eyes, and activated the perception ability again. Thanks to this, he could see how the soldiers in the area were being massacred by the wave of mutant beasts. Several seconds later, he landed on the ground, placed a fist on it and rested a knee on it, and thought that the defensive line was very close. He turned his head to one side, and upon seeing what was in front of him, he was shocked. With a confused look, he began to wonder what was happening. A giant mutant beast in the shape of a dragon emerged. This one was much larger than the other beasts. It had horns and could shoot thunderbolts. While it was launching an attack, it opened its mouth and started roaring. Underneath this mutant beast, there were a bunch of small mutant beasts. Lu Sheng stood up, stared at the mutant beast, and realized that this beast was a strange one. Upon closer inspection, he saw that the ground was filled with beasts, and there were several soldiers nearby who were still alive. He decided to go and see if he could remedy the situation and help out a bit. Not far from the area, there were several overturned tanks. Near the tanks, there were 3 men sitting down, with one of them standing on top. One of them told the others that casualties kept increasing. One of the soldiers had lost an arm. He had his arm bandaged. While holding the wound of his other arm with one hand, he turned his head towards the other man, and upon seeing that the master had also died, he asked him what they should do now. Next to him was a balding man with white hair who wore glasses. Next to him was a box of grenades. He picked up a grenade, removed the safety with his other hand, stared at it intently, and with a smile asked the other man if he was really asking him what they should do now. He threw the grenade over the tank towards where there were several mutant beasts. Several seconds later, the grenade exploded, shattering the bodies of the beasts into pieces. As the chunks of beast bodies were flying through the air, the man extended his hands forward, started looking upwards, opened his mouth, and began laughing out loud. He told the other soldier that they should keep killing. They should continue to help the master earn enough, so killing one more monster already counted as a gain. On top of the tank stood a man with 2 cigarettes in his mouth. He had 2 machine guns in his hands and was shooting and holding back the beasts. With an excited look, he began to gaze at the creatures, and upon hearing that killing was equivalent to gain, he decided to join them after running out of ammunition for the machine guns. The old man peered over the tank, and while holding a remote control in one hand to activate a bomb, he started looking at the beasts and with a smile explained to the others that long ago he had prepared enough explosives to reduce this area to ashes, ensuring that all the beasts would die without leaving a trace for scavengers. Next to them there was a man with black hair, who had his head and abdomen bandaged. He was lying on the ground. The soldier who had lost his arm placed one hand on his knee, turned his head towards the other soldier, and explained to the old man that Tao could no longer fight. The old man, who was holding the remote control with one hand, approached them, dropped an arm to the ground, and stared silently at Tao. While they were thinking about what to do now, an explosion occurred near them. The man who was on top of the tank and shooting at the mutant beasts with a machine gun was thrown backwards due to the explosion. He had lost his hand. While his hand was falling towards the ground, he opened his mouth and started screaming in pain. The old man and the other soldier looked up, and upon seeing this, they were shocked and began wondering what had happened. While the old man was watching as the soldier slowly fell to the ground, his expression changed drastically. With a terrified look, he thought that now that Kuroko had lost his arm, they were doomed. He decided not to stand idly by and do nothing. He approached a rock, and while holding a bag containing bombs in one hand, he started throwing bombs at the beasts with the other hand to prevent them from getting closer. He clenched his teeth tightly and was determined to completely destroy the mutant beasts. Several minutes passed. The old man reached into the bag containing bombs and realized it was empty. He began to look down at the ground, clenched his teeth tightly, and thought that they were in trouble. As a last resort, he took out the remote control and prepared to self-immolate. Kuroko fell to the ground, held his hand wound with his other hand, closed his eyes, and tried not to scream. The other soldier, who had lost his arm, approached him, sat down next to him, started talking to him, and decided to help him by bandaging the wound. In a matter of seconds, several mutant beasts began to approach them. Upon seeing this, the old man turned his back on them, grabbed the controller, started looking at the other soldiers, and thought it was time to accompany the master. At that moment, a strong wind made of blue energy began to blow. Upon seeing this, the 3 soldiers started covering their faces with their hands and wondered where this strong wind was coming from. A powerful tornado appeared in the area, and it started throwing thunderbolts to the sides, driving away the beasts. Several seconds later, the tornado began to disappear, and someone wearing military boots descended to the ground. This person was none other than Liu Sheng. While his body was surrounded by a powerful blue energy, and with one hand he was holding the spear tightly, he started looking at the soldiers and asked them if they were okay, and also requested that they retreat if they could stand up. The 3 soldiers turned their heads to one side, and upon seeing Liu Sheng, they couldn't help but wonder who this guy was and where he had come from. The old man started looking at Liu Sheng and couldn't help but start crying with excitement. He couldn't believe that the reinforcements had finally arrived. The soldier who had lost his arm grabbed the other soldier who had lost his hand. The old man clenched his fists, started jumping for joy, and told them that he didn't want to die. He asked everyone to retreat quickly. Liu Sheng gathered momentum and, with a penetrating gaze, began advancing towards the mutant beasts. Using the spear, he started killing all the beasts in his path. The soldier put Tao on his shoulders and went to a higher area. The old man bandaged Kuroko's hand. While he was helping the old man climb up, the other soldier caught their attention and with a surprised look told them that more reinforcements had arrived. Upon hearing this, both of them looked to the side and were shocked. The 3 climbed up to a higher area, and as they looked to the side, they saw a lot of explosions and how the mutant beasts were being massacred. When they looked more closely, they realized that reinforcements had not arrived but that the explosions were being caused by Liu Sheng. They couldn't believe that one person was doing all this. The old man started to stare at Liu Sheng and couldn't help but be amazed. He felt that Liu Sheng alone was more than enough to defeat these mutant beasts. Liu Sheng landed on the ground, creating a big explosion that killed many beasts. Then he unsheathed his spear, grabbed it with both hands, clenched his teeth tightly, and started cutting down the remaining beasts. One beast tried to attack him from behind, but but he reacted in time and using the spear, cut its body in half. After finishing off many beasts, Lu Sheng grabbed the spear with one hand and sat on top of the pile of corpses. At that moment, more beasts emerged and began to advance rapidly towards him. The old man finally understood why the defensive line of the 835th Division had been breached. The beasts seemed endless. Lu Sheng leaned his spear on his shoulder, began to stare at the beasts, and upon seeing that there were so many, he decided to change his attack method. He grabbed the spear with one hand, stood atop the pile of corpses, and a woman's spirit appeared behind him. She wore metal armor and could control ice energy. He began to look down and activated the cold spear. Then, he jumped and forcefully threw the spear towards the mutant beasts. In the blink of an eye, the spear hit the area where the beasts were, destroying them into pieces. Upon seeing this, the other beasts started to flee. Lu Sheng looked at them while smoke was coming out of his mouth. He began to smile and thought that ice and fire were two different worlds. While several beasts were approaching him, he clenched his fist, and it began to emit a golden energy. Now that he could control ice and fire, not only had he improved the ability to control a single element, but he could even control multiple elements at the same time. He began to look at the beasts and with a smile, he started wondering if this was the true strength of the natural breathing method. For him, this battle was exciting. He used thunder breathing and flame breathing, forcefully striking the ground with his fist. Thunder made of fire appeared and destroyed part of the ground and shattered the nearby beasts into pieces. Several seconds later, he grabbed the spear with his hand, started looking forward with a serious gaze, sighed, and then took a big leap. While he was in the air, he held the spear with one hand, prepared to throw it, and used the breath of earth and wind. He grabbed the spear tightly, and while his eyes were shining, he began to look at the beasts with a disdainful gaze and called them scum, ordering them to retreat. Using all his strength, he threw the spear towards the ground. It impaled into the ground, killing the mutant beasts and creating cracks. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.